This is Critical Nonsense, your high-low show about culture, science, and tech. This week, Jess asks Joey and Aaron about the funny paradox of milk maths.
Woo! Pretend I'm singing a Scottish prog rock song about thunder and lightning. This is what a Joey sounds like.
Where did you come from? Where did you go? Where did you come from? Cotton Eye Joe. This is what Aaron sounds like.
And this is what an executive producer and hamster dance Jess Vander sounds like.
Hi, this is Jess.
Oh, we missed the hamster dance. Yeah, hamster dancing. Woo, yeah. Get down. Put your good foot.
Because of scheduling conflicts and because we want to remain in your Spotify Wrapped recap, we are doing a lightning round today. We clean the house. Actually, the house is on fire. Just ignore it. Jess, you have some colloids to discuss.
This is true, though. I admit, when said that way, it sounds...
Thanks, I hate it.
Thanks, I hate it. This is my new segment. At dinner the other day, Ryan and I were talking about how funny it is that on a typical scale, you would go 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and you keep going all the way up to 100 and you count like counting. But when you think about milk, milk goes 0, 1, 2, 50, as in half and half, and whole all of a sudden. And I know this is not how it works. I understand that the premise is that something like 5% is full fat, and the whole thing is talking about the amount of fat. And then there's half and half is more fat than whole milk. And I get it. But the premise that there could be these two coexisting universes where 5% is 100%, and that there's absolutely nothing in between 2% and 100% is just so interesting and funny. And it took me to all of these other places that I feel like this phenomenon exists when you think about reading sheet music and how you have two identical looking sets of bars, but a note in the third slot down in the treble clef is just not the same as the note in the third slot down on the bass clef. Think about Celsius and Fahrenheit. A degree is like cold in one place and very hot in another place, and that could simultaneously be accurate. It's not that I don't intellectually understand how this is happening. It's just really interesting how we put ourselves in situations where we need to be able to juggle all of this at once. And so I would just love to ask, why is this is not a good question. You can't ask why is milk math so silly.
I think you just
that's kind of what I want to say.
Yup. I'm running with it. I'm a yes-ander. And I will say that I think that...
Yes-ander.
Yeah.
Yes-ander.
If I were writing a
Jess
sci-fi
Vander.
novel... Oh my... How did we not... What? Wow. Whoa.
Sure, you already know that.
That's true. You are no ander.
You're a no butter.
No.
Yeah.
Which is also a problem with milk math. No butter.
It is. I don't know. Joey, what do you think? You got thoughts. I can tell you got thoughts.
I mean, it is like in your certain, like it's like definitely one of those things that could be like a strategy world problem, like a bunch of people being like, what's an efficient system? Let's build a framework. Like how do we do this thing? And you're like, all right, so I've designed a framework and here's how it's going to go. 1%, we're going to call it skim, because while that could sound like you're skimming the fat off the top, it could also just be 1%, and it sounds right. And we're going to go with that. 2%, just 2%. That sounds good. And then whole is anywhere between 3 and 5%. So it's a whole lot of numbers, so we're just going to call it whole. Give someone some room. Half and half. Half and half of
Sounds
what?
about good.
Doesn't matter. Half and half of fat. So we're gonna roll with as like a framework. It's just so absurd and truly makes no sense, and it's just like cobbled together over time. You're like, hey, what do you think of half and half as the name for this? And you're like, yeah. What's it half and half of? I don't care.
No.
It tastes good. Like, I like it.
Well, the other place that it takes me, also musical, is modes and like Mixolydian mode, Lydian mode, Dorian mode, and for the non-music theory people amongst us,
Gregorian
this is necessary. There is no Gregorian mode unless you're that badass. Yeah, like that. I think that might have been a didgeridoo mode, which I also love and appreciate. Yeah, but no. So modes are basically scales, but like we tend to think about, especially in like contemporary Western music, as it just being like A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Like those are the letters of a scale on a piano, right? But you can, in between those, there's like A sharp, B sharp, C sharp. There's flats as well, etc. And we tend to think of scales as being major or minor, and we just kind of talk about that as like happy scales and bad scales, happy chords and sad chords. That's basically how they exist colloquially. But that order of whole notes and half notes, that like whole step, half step, whole step, half step, whole step, which was almost a major, but I skipped a whole step somewhere in there. They're different combinations. Like you can do half step, whole step, and then half step. And there's tons of music that's written in these other modes, like, or in other scales, like pentatonic scales, which I love a good pentatonic scale.
Acapella.
Except for
it's very acapella.
Not a fan of the band.
No, not so much. But all of those, it is the nerdy strategy framework thing too. It's just like, and that's what music always is. It's like if you just throw a frame on top of frequencies and then recreate the patterns in different ways, what do you get? Like that's what music is. And so there's a lot of whole milk math across all of music. It's not just the staves, but it's also the scales. And it's cool. It does cool things.
I was trying to explain some measurement things to Emerson the other day, like almost for like playing with like measuring tapes and things like that. And she's like, I'm this tall, and just like makes up a word. Or I'm 17 apples tall, or, like whatever. And so I was like, okay, well, like I'm going to explain an inch and a foot. And I'm like, oh, God damn it. Like, well... So a foot was a king's foot at some point, and then that became like you start doing these things.
And then now it's different. Now there's like a. Were we talking about this? This came up the other day where we were looking into it. It used to be there was like a cast of the king's foot, and that was the foot. But now we have sort of worked backwards such that a foot is like a very specific, is it light? Oh boy, I'm gonna have to look this up. But it's now like we've sort of back-worked a new definition because a foot in the original sense was outrageous. Have we stumbled into these things by accident, or has it just come out of complexities that are too hard to explain unless you know all the stuff behind it?
Well, it is you're trying to like make things that we got that were imprecise precise, right? Like, you're trying, like, our calendars were created before we had a level of precision, so they're still kind of broken, or the length of a day, right? Trying to fit it into things. Like even there is sort of like an inherent like brokenness of humans that is like a mathematical, right? Like a base 12 measurement scale would be great. Like if the equivalent of 10, like some sort of unit, was 12 instead of 10, like a decimal scale, then it would be easier and
Yes,
more
it would.
effective to do like simple math, fractions, like proportions, whatever. But like we have 10 fingers, so it's like, I guess it's 10, like it's kind of good enough. But
This
like
also
setting
goes
some
to
baseline and
language.
being like, well, it turns out the king's foot was actually the length that light travels in one microsecond or nanosecond or whatever. You're like, oh, sure, we'll work with that. Yeah, that's what we meant all along. A foot is a nanosecond of light speed.
Communication and like persistence, right? Like, let's just use it again and again and again until we feel like we have to then apply some other like retroactive logic to it to try to defend it, or at least to standardize it. And I don't know why I couldn't help myself, but I was like, I've sitting around late at night, thinking about like 11, 12, 13. Like, why isn't there a 1-teen or a 2-teen?
Yes.
It's the language thing. Like, we don't there's certain things where it's like, okay, let's skip over this. And I know there's an answer to this on YouTube or Reddit. I've seen or read them while in the state of exploring these. I don't remember. The name of this podcast isn't So I've Been Thinking, in that I have an answer to these thoughts. But
I've wondered, but haven't continued to explore.
Exactly. But yeah, that one gets me, because it also is pervasive across languages, right? Like in French, 11, 12, like that's also 11, 12. It's not like and like when you get into the 20s, it's like 21, 22, 23, 24. Like all of that is just built on 20 plus 1, 20 plus 2. I'm sorry.
Yeah, except until you get to like the 80s in French, and then it's like 240s.
Yes,
which
I
whatever.
love that.
Also, I have to corrections department myself. I was referring to the meter, which has since been defined as the length of the path traveled by light in a vacuum during a time interval of 1 over 299, 792, 4. I can't read numbers, is what I'm learning in this moment right now. It's not even clear that it's a number. 299, 792, 458. It's not a phone number. It's just numbers of a second.
I love it.
Excuse me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the thing, is like you in all of these measurement issues, you have to have some baseline, right? Like what is it? 1 gram is like based on some molecular equivalent, right? Like a certain number of atoms of a specific element. Like you just have to say then, okay, trying to break outside of local conditions. But like, how does that come back, right? Because light will bend and shift its trajectory based on gravitational forces in different local conditions, and same with like weights and whatever. So you're like, okay, we're gonna say a meter is this.
Yeah.
So even if you're in a gravity well, a meter will still be a meter, even if it's smaller than a meter.
Right. Well, that's the thing, is like we're constantly striving for a better operational definition of something. Like this thing as measured by blank, and trying to make that as consistent as possible. But then, like you said, there's also the base unit, or like the reference point, the control of this relative to other stuff. And especially when those things start colliding, this is reminding me, someone who I did Science Olympiad with in high school just shared yesterday the work that she and her team at I believe it's Caltech are doing. And they just had this like revelatory discovery about wormholes and entanglement being related, and how like 2 totally separate things have now been proven to be the same thing. And like, this is us just like putting shots in the dark of like different ways to define stuff and describe stuff. And now, worlds collide, and sometimes they work and sometimes they don't. And that's how you get milk.
I just watched a video last night while I was like working much later than I wanted to be, like trying to catch up. And I just had like, whatever. It's I'm telling on myself, I guess, but I I had like weird science and math YouTube videos playing in the background while I was doing work, and there was this video from Quantum Magazine about,
This is
I believe
it.
they call it,
That's hers.
they call it, well, I don't know, it wasn't about wormholes. It may have
then that's
been
not it.
This was about like mergers of different sections of mathematics that were like basically viewed like, we're going to leave this one over here, like discrete number theory on this side, and then we're going to move over here into like the world of like waves and functions and shapes, and that's going to be like a separate part, and like never the twain shall meet, or whatever the phrase is. Like, we're not going to, these don't go together. But then somehow there was like two problems that people couldn't get like proofs on, and the ways in which they ultimately got proofs to both of these problems, like one was Lamarck's what is it, like Lamarck's paradox or Lamarck's proof or something like that, where it was like, if you have the quadratic theory, a squared plus b squared equals c squared for triangles, like the proof that people were trying to get was like a cubed plus b cubed plus c or equals c cubed never works for any number other than 2. And then on the flip side, like these groups of people were trying to get, and all of a sudden they were just like, oh wait, these solve each other. And now, like, yeah. Anyways, sorry.
Just so that tangent. Took a turn.
Unsatisfying.
Where did Aaron go? Aaron, when you leave, things go crazy. Okay, I'm gonna wrap this up. I would like to take all credit for a conversation that started at a dinner table being around a joke about the fat content of milk has taken us to crazy scientific discoveries that you never would have expected. And it seems like the core of all of this is that, you know, maybe we just got to look a little bit closer, because when you do, it all starts to make sense. You start to see that the milks have a method to the madness, that the musics have different meanings. Aaron could explain that better. And the wormholes are connected. Oh, I'm gonna add this to the show notes. You're gonna love it. You're gonna love it.
Modular forms, Ramanujan's discriminant function, polynomial equation, elliptic curve, modular arithmetic, infinite power series, naturally.
It's obvious. It's so clear. It's so obviously clear.
If we would have done a polynomial function when we were measuring milk fat, all of this would have, no, that.
Yeah. Okay.
Maybe milk just wants to be whole. That's all. That's what it is.
Yeah. 5% is 100%. Just say it with me, everybody.
Well, Critical Nonsense is a Sylvain production.
Brought to you by... I have nothing.
It's Germs are from Germany. As always, we'd like to thank executive producer and maths with an S, Jess Vander.
We'd like to thank sound engineer and simultaneously the best and also the best, Alex Contel.
We'd like to thank our programming coordinator and rude boy, Les Jacobs.
And the Celsius to our Fahrenheit, thanks so much to the production crew, Sarah Gilbert and Nora Mestridge.
And as always, thank you, Sorry, Ellen.
Whoops, sorry.
Special thanks to science videos on YouTube. I said it once, said it again. Maybe adding math videos to this. Have a much harder time understanding those, but, you know, some of them are good.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for the people cracking the code. You are definitely going to do it better than someone who cannot read a string of 9 numbers, and I now know that person is me. So we're feeling great about how my mental deterioration is going.
Well, we made it.
And congrats to Sam Davis and all the people figuring out wormhole stuff. Okay, that's all I have to say.
I saw something about this and I haven't read it yet, but I'm excited to dig into it. It was on my radar. It's cool that you know that person. Thanks to networks of friends doing cool shit.
That is, yes, plus up to that. Plus.
Can I hang out with your wormhole friend? You're like, no. She's not going to be. She's not interested. I'll just tell you in advance. She's not looking for any new friends right now, particularly ones with dumb big heads that don't get the hint. All right, well, that's the show.
That's it. This is the show. Sorry, Aaron. Look what we did. Okay, bye.
Love you, Mina. Bye.
Brought to you by Science Milk, where we really break. No, it's so terrible. Let me start again. Also, Alex Cantel says, "What is going on in the call chat?"
Brought to you by colloids.
Brought to you by. I have nothing.